Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York has vowed to file impeachment articles against some members of the U.S. Supreme Court. This after the High Court's recent string of controversial actions and decisions. For more on this, we welcome Stephen Montoya, partner, Montoya, Lucero, and Pastor. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Good to see you again. All right, she wants to file impeachment articles against what? One justice, two justice, all justices? How does this work?
She hasn't announced who her targets are, whether it's one or many. The most obvious target, I guess, would be Justice Thomas, Justices Alito and Thomas. I don't know what she's going to do. She hasn't done it. She said she was going to do it, I believe, today, and I've not heard her doing anything. How does she do it? She basically, it's going to be impossible for her to do because she doesn't have the votes. And because the speaker is a Republican, he's not going to put it on the agenda. She doesn't have a majority. It's not going to get off the ground. It's dead on arrival at the House of Representatives.
But she can still raise a ruckus. And if you want to, let's go to just theoretically here, impeaching a Supreme Court justice. Has this ever happened before?
It's happened once. That would be Samuel Chase. He was impeached, meaning they brought charges against him. Those charges were entertained by the United States Senate, and he was not convicted, and he served until his death. I think he was acquitted in 1805.
Holy smoke. Okay, that's a long time ago. As far as this kind of impeachment is concerned, we understand high crimes and misdemeanor, but we're familiar with that. Same kind of deal when it comes to Supreme Court justices?
It is the same kind of deal, even though it's difficult to say that with any certainty because we really don't have any examples. There are a few, however, historical examples. One of the former Chief Justice of the New Hampshire Supreme Court, the former president or governor of New Hampshire, his name was John Pickering, and he was a United States District Judge who was impeached and convicted in 1804. In fact, his conviction came down the same day that they actually charged Samuel Chase with impeachment. It was soon after Thomas Jefferson became president. Thomas Jefferson was trying to purge the federal judiciary of the Federalists. Thomas Jefferson was a Democratic Republican who thought the Federalists were too conservative, and he was trying to kick them off the bench. Pickering was a little bit crazy. He was alleged to have committed blasphemy from the bench, ignored precedents from the bench, and been drunk on the bench. And he was actually convicted and kicked off the bench.
So it works the same way. House tries, Senate convicts.
Correct. A majority of the House impeaches. 2/3 of the Senate must convict, and that's a very difficult number to reach.
Back to what Supreme Court justices could be impeached over. I mean, Justices Thomas and Alito, they have connections to the Stop the Steal movement. They haven't recused themselves on any of these J6 cases as well. I think this is what the Congresswoman was kind of focused on, this along with the presidential immunity thing. Is that the kind of thing that could rise to impeachable offenses?
I believe so, and I'll explain why. First of all, there are two federal statutes that prohibit any federal judge from sitting on a case where a reasonable person could question their impartiality. Second of all, there's another federal statute that applies to all judges, including justices, that prohibits judges from not recusing themselves when they have a conflict of interest. These are federal statutes, the violation of which wouldn't constitute a felony or a misdemeanor, but in the language of the Constitution, violating a law is enough. If you couple that with Clarence Thomas's 2 decades history of taking undisclosed gifts from what can only be described as patrons, I believe if you had the votes that he could be impeached and he could be convicted.
With that in mind, let's say, again, hypothetically, that a Supreme Court justice is impeached and is convicted. what happens? Where do you go for the next Supreme Court justice?
You follow the Constitution. The president nominates a replacement, and they're confirmed by the Senate.
Okay, but I would imagine that would be a pretty divided Senate. Is that the kind of thing that you wait for something to happen, and you're 4-4 until something goes on? What?
Yeah, we've done that before.
Yeah.
A justice dies, and the Supreme Court hasn't always been a court of 9.
Are there legal remedies for a Supreme Court justice who has been impeached and removed from office?
No. They could bring a lawsuit, but I believe it would be dismissed because I think most federal courts, including the United States Supreme Court, would conclude that the separation of powers prevents the judicial branch from second-guessing what the legislative branch concludes regarding whether or not someone should be impeached and convicted.
So it's bottom line here, because obviously it's not going to happen, but again, she could raise a ruckus. Is this a civics lesson from the Congresswoman? Are we going to learn how far can she go with something like this?
I think it is a civics lesson, but more importantly, I think that it should be a lesson for the court. The court recently declared that our president cannot be criminally prosecuted if he violates the law in his official capacity. That's a bad thing. The court has said that Congress cannot impose an ethical code upon it, and only the court can judge itself. Congress, the Senate, asked Chief Justice Roberts to appear before it and discuss the status of the court, and he refused. That was very arrogant. The court is becoming very arrogant. It puts itself above the people, and I really do believe that a move by Congress to rein in the court would temper the court's arrogance and really make it comport with the traditional position of the court as the least dangerous branch.
So basically put the fear of God in them.
Yes. It's a good thing.
Would that be a good thing, or would it be more fear if you added more justices?
I think it would be a good thing, but I also think it would be a good thing to add more justices. One of the problems that we have is that these justices are so important. If we diluted them by increasing their number, their importance would correspondingly diminish, and I think that would be a good thing. The court needs a very strong dose of humility, in my opinion.
Stephen Montoya, thank you so much. Good information. Good to have you here.
Thank you, sir.